Alright, so before we get started cleaning our battery today, I've laid out a lot of the favorite weapons I like to use for this process. Here I got my voltmeter, some clean towels, this battery terminal protector, a couple of versions that I like to use. On the right over here I got some of the tools I use, battery lifting strap, some of the various brushes that I like to use for cleaning the terminals, some of the hand tools that you'll need to use to get the terminals off the batteries, and some small hand tools for removing the battery hold down. In the back row, I've got an old coolant jug that I cut open to use for cleaning parts with, and a brush, and containers, some baking soda, and a coolant jug over there on the far left I use for cleaning the battery in. Oh, and then most importantly, some fuel to keep us going through this little project. Okay, so our test subject today is a late model Tundra. Let's take a look under the hood, see what the battery looks like. Well, let's see, just a real quick visual inspection. You know, I see a little bit of surface, a little bit of dust on the surface of the battery. Obviously the negative terminal's got some kind of chemistry experiment going on, and some of that same chemistry experiment I can see building up here on the battery hold down. To get a better idea of what's really happening on the surface of the battery, I can show you real quickly with a voltmeter the vapors that come out of the battery normally during that charging and discharging cycle accumulate on the top of the battery and mix with the dust, and the combination of those two kind of makes a little bit of a conductive path, and you can see that with your voltmeter. It shows up as a little bit of a voltage drop. Right there I got about 6.5 volts just touching the top of the case with the battery, or with the digital meter positive probe. You know, and you can move it around various places and you may see larger drops. There's a little lower voltage drop as you get closer to the negative terminal, and a little higher as we get farther away. So if that gets cleaned up, those voltage drops will go away, and that's a source of a battery drain that we'd like to eliminate today with our battery service. I'll go ahead and put this tool away and see if I can't get the hardware off of there. And I like to start with cleaning the hardware, because a lot of times this stuff will be in poor enough condition that you actually need to repaint it. So I want to clean it first, get it all dried off, and get it painted so that I can finish up with the rest of it. So I'll turn the camera off and I'll get it set up so I can show you how to clean that real quick, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I ran up and got some nice hot tap water. I think the hotter the water, the better this works. It just helps with the chemical reaction that's going on between the acid. And you know, these smaller parts, you know, I'll just drop them in there and let them soak. If they're really corroded, you can kind of see a little bit of bubbling or some fizzing going on. Just use the brush to clean off the rest of this material. Get it all cleaned up down to bare metal. Sometimes you might see some paint coming off. That's okay. We're going to replace it. Stuff good and mixed up. And that's looking better already. Some of you might be tempted to stop at this point. I wouldn't recommend it. This stuff, these parts anyway, they tend to corrode a lot faster once the protective layer of paint's gone. get another clean layer on. It'll keep everything looking nice and sanitary for quite a long while. Sometimes if it's a little more stubborn, you can get in there with a wire brush. That'll get the rest of it out. Okay, that looks pretty good. Parts all work fine. Go ahead and grab some compressed air. Get all these parts blowed off. Looks like I might have a little residue of that baking soda left over, so I think I'll take these over to the sink and rinse them off in some clean water. I'll come back and show you how to paint these. Alright, I'm ready to paint. Got everything cleaned up and dried off. You know, I prefer to use like a gloss black, but you could just as easily use flat black or a semi-gloss, or if you're really into customizing something, you can try a little bit of this hammered type of finish, but usually it's whatever can of black is just laying around that I got left over. I'll use up the rest of it on. I think I will hit this surface that was corroded the most twice. The light coat to start. You notice how I'm using this J-hook to kind of hold it. Gives me something to hang on to while I'm painting. And just the light coat over the rest of it. Yeah, okay, that looks good. So the reason I'm using that J-hook is for this purpose right here. I can let that hang and dry. Won't leave any marks on it. And by the time I get finished cleaning up the rest of the battery and putting it back in, that'll be dry and ready to go. Let's go get the battery out. Okay, so some basic hand tools. Sometimes you might find that these nuts that hold the terminals or hold the clamps onto the terminals, they get corroded so bad that, you know, a regular socket or a wrench won't fit it very well anymore. They do bake some nice battery pliers that are kind of tapered, and they grip very well. I highly recommend them. Sometimes if you have a stubborn terminal end, it's nice to have a removable tool for getting them off. You know, let's see, before I actually disconnect power, it's a good idea, especially with the later model cars, if you have some kind of security feature on the radio, ask your customer if they have the lockout code, because when you go to hook everything back up, that radio will go into a panic mode and it won't let you play it, and sometimes that can create an embarrassing situation for you, the technician. Also, it's a good idea to go ahead and jot down the pre-programmed radio stations that the customer has in the radio player. If you're like me and you have a teenage daughter, this is a very important step, and I really don't recommend bypassing it, because of course when you disconnect power, all those memory presets are going to go away, and there's nothing worse than a teenage daughter screaming about, "Who changed the radio stations?" Okay, so we always recommend taking the negative terminal off first. This cuts down the likelihood of a spark getting away from you. And I'll grab mine. This lifting tool has One end's marked positive. Usually the positive terminals are a little bit bigger, but they just slip over the posts and away you go. Also, don't forget the battery tray. This needs to be cleaned up too. Okay, I'll reposition the camera and see you in a minute. Alright, so my water is still pretty warm from the last time I filled it up. I think I'll just add a little more baking soda. Get it stirred in there pretty good. Oh yeah, it's got a little bit of fizz going on. I'll just give this a quick bath and set it aside. And I'll rinse it off with some clean water when I'm finished cleaning up the battery. A lot of what we do as mechanics is a lot like washing dishes. It seems like we can never get away from this. Doesn't matter if it's a battery tray or a full-on engine rebuild. There's always a lot of parts that need to be cleaned up. Alright, I'll set that off to the side for a minute. Now I'm just going to use a little bit of this mixture to help clean the battery. You can kind of see how it just instantly reacts with the acid that's just on the case of the battery. You want to be really careful not to ever get this mixture down inside the battery. And what it's doing right now is neutralizing the acid that's deposited on the surface, and it would do the same thing to the acid that's inside the battery if we let it. And that would ruin the battery instantly, and we don't want to do that. Always keep the caps on when you're cleaning these guys up. Alright, I think we're ready to rinse. I'll get the camera moved and join you in a minute. Alright, done with that. Won't need it anymore. I'll give the battery tray a quick scrub and final rinse. Clear it aside. You need to give the battery a good final scrubbing and a rinse. Don't want any of that baking soda mixture will dry as a white residue and it looks kind of gross. You want to make sure you get it all rinsed off. And when I'm done with this, I'll use some compressed air to dry everything off before I put it back in the vehicle. But I still have some battery terminals I need to clean, so I better do that first. Okay, here we are back at the vehicle. I'm going to attempt to clean this up. Looks like I still got some good solution left over from cleaning up the battery and the hold down part, so I'm just going to use that in a different container. And see if we can get this negative terminal to clean up a little bit. Sometimes if these are heavily corroded, it might be a good idea just to let them soak in that solution for a while. Takes a while to get it to all settle down. I think the last time I had a student practice on this vehicle, they didn't do a good job of cleaning or covering up this terminal with some protective spray when we were finished, and that's why it ended up corroding so fast. This time I'll make sure we get a good coating on there. Maybe slow that down from happening next time. Yeah, I'm not seeing no fizzing, no reaction going on in this terminal. It's still in pretty good shape. Okay, so we'll blow dry those and I'll get the battery set back in place. Alright, looks like we're finally about ready to put stuff back together. Before we do, I like to clean up both the terminals and the posts on the batteries before I make those connections again. Here's a typical battery post and terminal cleaner. The terminal cleaner end usually works great and it'll last you forever. The problem with this tool is the terminal end ends up getting all worn out in a relatively short period of time. So what I found works really good. This is actually a diesel injector cleaning brush. It's a version, one of several versions that Snap-on sells, and I highly recommend them because I've used this one for years and it really doesn't show any wear at all. Let's flip that guy over, give a couple of twists, and it's nice and clean. Every toolbox should have one of these right there. Gets you down to a nice clean connection. I'll grab this battery. I'll give the posts a quick turn. Now there's a couple different ways you can protect these terminals once you get them put back together. And I'll show you both versions, one on each. Don't need to over tighten that. I've used nothing but wheel bearing grease or moly grease, just a thin coating. You'd be surprised how long that'll keep a battery terminal clean. Doesn't need to be much either, just a thin little coat. And of course, the next time you clean the battery, all you do is wipe all this stuff off, and it'll look good as new. And the other version, before you set the negative terminal down, grab yourself a shop towel, unfold it all the way, and then just tear a little hole big enough for the post to stick through, and set that around the post before you put the clamp on. Now maybe you can kind of see where this is going. That'll help keep the overspray down to a minimum. Like that. And also give you, like a more professional looking finish instead of just having this stuff sprayed all over the top of the battery. From the other side here. There we go, and then all you need to do is just tear this to get it out from underneath the terminal. Yeah, that's a nice clean job. Okay, like I promised earlier, all the hardware, you know, the hold down hardware should be dry. Yeah, it's a little cold out today. It's still a little bit sticky. That's okay. Still looks pretty good. What did I do with that bolt? Anybody seen that bolt I laid down? Oh, there it is. Man, that thing looks like brand new, doesn't it? Just make sure it's in there nice and snug. It's not going to be sliding around. It doesn't need to be really tight. Let's see, what else we got left to do? Oh, got to reprogram the radio station. I can take care of that a little bit later. First, I wanted to show you what the voltage readings ended up being before and after. I'll hook this guy back up again. And what do we got? I got 0 volts, where before I was getting like 6.6 volts or something like that. So we definitely have a much cleaner case than what we started out with. Hope you enjoyed that little production.